I need to speak to my daughter because you guys aren't allowed to speak to her at all. That's from the lawyer. He does not want you guys speaking to her. And I can get him on the phone and he can tell you that over the phone if that works, or I can go in and tell her not to open her mouth. But how you guys did this on the weekend is just, all you have to do is go, hey, there's a warrant for her. We would have brought her right down here with no...
The Mackenzie Shirilla case was supposed to be over. A verdict had been delivered. A sentence had been imposed. The legal system had spoken. Yet, years after the fatal crash that claimed the lives of Dominic Russo and Davion Flanagan, the controversy surrounding the case continues to grow. What began as a criminal prosecution has transformed into something much larger. A sprawling public debate involving family loyalty, accountability, media narratives, prison conduct, and the increasingly blurred line between evidence and internet speculation. For many observers, the legal proceedings appeared to bring a sense of finality. Prosecutors argued that the crash was intentional. Defense attorneys maintained that it was a tragic accident. After reviewing the evidence, the court ultimately sided with the prosecution's theory of the case. The result was a conviction that immediately generated national headlines and divided public opinion. Some viewed the outcome as justice for the victims and their families. Others questioned whether the evidence truly established intent beyond a reasonable doubt. Regardless of where people stood, one thing was undeniable. The case had become one of the most talked about criminal prosecutions in recent memory. But while the courtroom battle may have concluded, another battle was only beginning. In the months and years that followed, public attention shifted away from the crash itself and toward the people standing behind Mackenzie. Her parents emerged as some of her most outspoken defenders, appearing in interviews, documentaries, and podcasts to challenge the narrative that had been accepted by the court. Rather than retreat from public view, they entered the spotlight, determined to convince audiences that their daughter had been misunderstood. That decision would have enormous consequences. Every interview generated new headlines. Every public appearance sparked fresh criticism. Every statement was analyzed, dissected, and debated across social media platforms. What began as a campaign to defend their daughter gradually evolved into a public relations crisis of its own. Critics argued that the family's comments demonstrated a refusal to accept responsibility. Supporters countered that they were simply doing what any parent would do, standing beside their child during the darkest chapter of her life. As public interest intensified, online communities began digging deeper into the family's history. Thousands of pages of documents, reports, and communications associated with the case became subjects of intense scrutiny. Social media users, independent commentators, and true crime content creators spent countless hours analyzing details that many believed could reveal a broader story behind the headlines. The result was a flood of speculation. Claims emerged, theories circulated, interpretations multiplied. Some commentators argued that the family's public behavior raised serious questions about accountability and parenting. Others suggested that certain dynamics within the household appeared unusual. Yet, despite the growing volume of discussion, much of the material being circulated online remained exactly that: discussion. Allegations were debated, theories were proposed, and assumptions were made. But legal experts repeatedly warned that speculation should never be confused with evidence. That distinction, however, often becomes difficult to maintain in the age of social media. The internet thrives on unanswered questions, and in this case, there were plenty of them. One of the most frequently discussed aspects of the controversy involves Mackenzie's younger sister, Danielle. Unlike other family members who appeared publicly to defend Mackenzie, Danielle has largely remained absent from the media spotlight. Her silence has fueled widespread curiosity. Internet users have repeatedly questioned why she has not participated in interviews or documentaries, especially given the extraordinary attention surrounding her family. Because Danielle has largely remained private, numerous claims about her experiences have circulated online. Various commentators have pointed to recorded conversations, public statements, and family interactions as evidence of possible tension within the household. Critics have argued that these discussions raise concerns about favoritism and family dynamics. Others believe such conclusions are premature and unfair without direct confirmation from Danielle herself. The reality is that very little is publicly known about her perspective. That lack of information has created a vacuum. And whenever a vacuum exists in a high-profile case, speculation inevitably rushes in to fill it. Meanwhile, another aspect of the story continues to generate controversy: the family's unwavering defense of Mackenzie despite the conviction. Throughout numerous interviews, family members have consistently maintained that the fatal crash was not intentional. They have questioned aspects of the prosecution's case and have expressed frustration with the legal outcome. For supporters, this behavior is understandable. Parents often continue believing in their children even when the evidence appears overwhelming to outsiders. For critics, however, the family's position represents something entirely different. They argue that the refusal to acknowledge the findings of the court has prolonged the controversy and prevented meaningful accountability. In their view, the public defense campaign has become less about seeking justice and more about challenging a verdict that the legal system has already rendered. This disagreement sits at the heart of the ongoing debate. Is the family fighting for truth, or are they refusing to accept reality? That question continues to divide audiences years after the conviction. The controversy has only intensified due to reports regarding Mackenzie's conduct while incarcerated. Public records and media reports have documented numerous disciplinary incidents during her time in prison. These reports have become a focal point for critics, who argue that the behavior contradicts efforts to portray her as a misunderstood teenager caught in a tragic situation. Supporters, however, reject that interpretation. They argue that prison misconduct reports are common within correctional institutions and should not automatically be viewed as indicators of an individual's overall character. They maintain that disciplinary infractions do not erase the possibility of remorse, rehabilitation, or personal growth. Yet, every new report inevitably generates another wave of media attention, another round of headlines, another cycle of debate, another reminder that this case continues to capture public fascination. What makes the situation particularly remarkable is how it has evolved beyond the legal issues themselves. The original criminal case centered on a fatal crash and the question of intent. Today's controversy is far broader. It now encompasses family relationships, media strategy, public perception, internet investigations, and competing narratives about responsibility. In many ways, the case has become a modern example of how high-profile prosecutions no longer end when the verdict is announced. Instead, they enter a second phase. A phase dominated not by judges and attorneys, but by podcasts, documentaries, YouTube channels, TikTok discussions, Reddit threads, and social media commentary. The courtroom may deliver a verdict, but the internet rarely does. Every new interview becomes evidence in the court of public opinion. Every statement becomes a potential headline. Every appearance generates fresh scrutiny. And every unanswered question becomes an opportunity for new theories to emerge. For the families of the victims, the continued attention serves as a painful reminder of a tragedy that changed their lives forever. For supporters of Mackenzie, it represents an ongoing fight against what they believe is a flawed narrative. For critics, it is a cautionary tale about accountability, privilege, and the consequences of refusing to confront difficult truths. Years after the crash, emotions remain raw, opinions remain divided, the controversy remains alive. And perhaps most importantly, the public remains fascinated, because beneath the legal arguments, beneath the interviews, beneath the documentaries and online debates, there is a larger question that continues to haunt this entire story. How much of what the public believes is based on proven facts, and how much has been shaped by assumptions, interpretations, and narratives that have taken on a life of their own? That question may ultimately determine how this case is remembered. Not just as a criminal prosecution, not just as a media spectacle, but as a defining example of what happens when a tragedy enters the digital age and becomes larger than the courtroom itself. And now, as new interviews continue to surface, as public records continue to be analyzed, and as social media users continue searching for answers, one unsettling question refuses to disappear. Is the public still uncovering the truth about this family? Or has the story already become something far more complicated than anyone realizes?